Good evening. My name is Brandon Cotton, and this is my theorist presentation on Haim Ginott. Haim Ginott was born in Israel in 1922. He is a living survivor of Nazi Europe during World War II. He was actually a victim among many others whom dealt with the intense brutalities of concentration camps. After the war, Ginott became an elementary teacher in his homeland. Then he immigrated to the United States and began his graduate career at the Columbia University of New York in 1952. He graduated with a doctoral degree in clinical psychology. Post-graduation, Junot had many careers that led him into developing his management theory. At first, he was a clinical psychologist and child therapist, where his primary study was on troubled youth. Ginott was also a parent educator. He led peer groups with parents on how to establish a communicative relationship with their child. Over the course of his career, he published 3 books, with his first, Between Parent and Child, being published in 1965. This book in particular focused on how parents could foster communicative relationships with their children and also guide them in listening instead of responding, or listening instead of taking action to fix immediately. 2 other books that Ginott released were Between Parent and Teenager, which released in 1967, and Teacher and Child, which released in 1972. When Ginott began living or moving to Jacksonville, Florida, he worked at a guidance clinic by helping with troubled youth. Here, Ginott was able to refine his unique combination of compassion and boundary setting for building relationships between adults and children. For the kids, Ginott believed in showing respect for children's feelings and setting firm limits on their behavior. Children have to understand that they are understood and that they are heard, and that whatever stance they choose to be on, despite their negative behavior, they are still felt that their opinions matter. Children, however, still need firm limitations, and setting clear boundaries can guide them in whatever behavior they choose to engage in. When it came to the parents, Janot wanted them to focus on socializing and cultivating their children's emotions. Parents have a hard time expressing themselves, especially when they become angry with a child's behavior, and must find a way to cultivate not only their emotions, but their child's emotions in order to synthesize them into a positive aspect. Parents also had to be compassionate in order to hear those kids and set clear boundaries. Compassion allows for a parent to understand, even though a child makes a mistake, to not punish them solely on that mistake, and to still be within reason of humanizing the aspect despite the negative behavior. Ultimately, Janot insisted on being strict with unacceptable behavior, but permissive with his feelings. Feelings cannot get involved when setting limitations on behavior, because if feelings are involved, then the behavior is taken personal, which removes the cooperation and empathy a parent needs to discipline their child. When it came to education, Janot believed that teachers had to show compassion instead of dismissing feelings. Once again, if a teacher dismisses a child's feelings, the child feels unheard and not reasoned with, therefore clarifying their misbehavior, further pushing them to commit that misbehavior again. Teachers have to listen with understanding. Oftentimes, teachers deny the child to fully express themselves, which in return makes the child confused, intense, and seek revenge. Janot also warned not to make things personal when addressing behavior. Use statements, for example, single out a child. While I hear a lot of talking, remove some pressure. What I mean is, if children are talking amongst the class, or one child in particular, Starting off the conversation saying, hey, you are talking, makes that child feel lonesome or singled out. Whereas if everybody's talking, or just that child in particular, you could single it as to, I hear a lot of talking going on that is disrupting the classroom environment. You have to stay clear of personal identification when addressing children, because if you single them out, it makes them feel like you're attacking them, which in reality, you're just trying to tell them about their misbehavior. Overall, the classroom teacher had to reinforce strict rules, but understand point of view. If the teacher wants to efficiently regulate the classroom, teachers had to be ensured that they are modeling the behavior that they want. After all, teachers have complete power through communication to influence the classroom situations. And whether that classroom situation be positive or negative, the teacher still has a sway in how the direction will go. In order to foster this positive working environment, Ginott believed that the teacher must model communication, include peer group cooperation, and use discipline in the place of punishment. To foster this environment, the teacher had to establish a few things in order for it to truly work. The main two principles a teacher needs is to ask questions, to listen, and the classroom teacher has to act as a facilitator to small group conversation. When it comes to asking questions and listening, teachers spend too much time talking and lecturing to the students. Do not believe that teachers should just ease back and consist of more of a facilitator role to add in instead of dictate. When it comes to a teacher's rules, teachers had to have them posted with specific consequences. Teachers also had to remind the students of these rules, because rules are easily forgotten unless reinforced. If a rule is to be taken serious, it has to be constantly applied and commented on, unless it will easily be forgotten. It will be left in the wind. Next, Janot believed the most important aspect was how the teacher conducted themselves. The classroom teacher has to understand that students want to feel accepted despite their negative behavior. Teachers must refrain from belittling their moves, because respect has to be felt in order to listen. Overall, students care about being accepted, via their person and via their behavior. If a teacher takes it personal and scrutinizes that child based on either their character or their character or their behavior, that child might not feel accepted within the class. The classroom teacher has to understand that students want to feel accepted despite whatever happens, and teachers must refrain from calling them names, belittling their moves or thoughts. Even in disrupting situations, classroom teachers have to remain positive and be wary of offensive language and disruptive behavior. If needed, the teacher had to handle this matter still positively, but in private. However, the matter cannot involve punishment, and if praises are given, they must be authentic to the child's performance. While Janot's philosophy is heavily praised for building relationships, he is also met with some critiques. For one, Janot did not intentionally go to school to become an educator, nor correlate to teaching. Many felt that his psychological standpoint outweighed the experience of an actual classroom teacher. He could not truly give advice on teaching if he himself did not have that much experience as a teacher himself. Many also felt there was an issue with him focusing strictly on communication. For some schools like my own, there are issues that array when developing communication strategies. Language barriers can foster if children are from different countries, or even teachers. It also assumes that all children know how to effectively communicate, which in reality they do not. There has to be a certain level of understanding between the communicative parties, whether that be student to student, student to teacher, or even teacher to teacher. Also, Ginot's theory can be seen to only work in a perfect world setting, where all parties know how to communicate. The major issue is from some students who may take advantage of the classroom teacher's empathy, despite class rule and strict procedures. Without adequate punishment, this child may continue to display these behaviors, even though the teacher is listening and trying to understand their point of view. In my opinion, I like how Ginott wants teachers to focus on listening first instead of trying to fix. His theory reminds me of my book club's read, How to Talk to Teens. Listening makes people feel like their emotions matter and helps them take action once their peace is made. However, I do agree that his theory can be seen as too passive. Replacing punishment is not a good idea when it pertains to extreme case situations. Some students do take advantage, especially if they realize they are in control of the situation. For example, if a student realizes that the teacher is trying to remain positive in an already negative situation that student caused, they may egg on the teacher. Now, this is not a situation in all cases, but I have seen it before. Some schools have disruptive behavior that is intentional and is solely to focus on getting under the nerves of other people, especially other students or teachers. Lastly, I wanted to end my presentation on one of Ginott's quotes that I thought was very powerful. I've come to a frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It's my personal approach that creates the climate. It's my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated and a child humanized or dehumanized. I chose this quote because it sums up Ginott's character. The teacher must model what they expect. Teachers can educate, escalate, and energize a child in a matter of seconds. It all depends on how that teacher carries out that moment in addressing a child's misbehavior. As a classroom teacher myself, I noticed that upon reading the book provided by my PLC group and studying Ginott's philosophy, I can model what my expectations are because that's what I expect from my students. The kids respect me and they listen to me a lot more because they can see that I'm trying my best to do exactly what I tell them to do. For you, I want you to consider, how does discipline really play a role in your class? My question to you is, do you feel that punishment can be replaced with discipline? If so, what does your discipline look like and what implementations must be carried out in order to sustain that discipline? If no, why is punishment needed to enforce discipline, and what does your classroom punishment consist of? Thank you for viewing my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye.